Hello and welcome to another episode of Fellowship of Essential Oils. Today we're going to get down into the roots and the muck of it all. We're going to get into the depths of vetiver, aren't we, Liz?
Your puns get worse every week. We are indeed in the roots today. Yeah, a fabulous oil.
Yes. And another one that I guess you have a bit of a passion for, it's one of the oils that you've written one of your books on.
Yeah, I have to say it's a tiny little book, to be honest. Was the first single note book that I wrote, but really fascinating oil. It wasn't really one that I had used that much before. I'd had it, but so it's just used to put it out to my readers. What shall I write about next? And one of my readers said, please do vetiver. I love vetiver and I'd love to do more about it. And I was like, oh, all right then. And there aren't that many surprises in the medicine, but the actual plant itself is really important from an ecological point of view. So we'll ask you, how much do you know about the plant?
About the plant specifically, I know that most most vetiver is sourced in Haiti these days,
Yeah.
primarily for the perfume industry, but obviously aromatherapy plays a role in that as well. It's gifted. It's a grass plant. It's the oil actually is gifted from the root, and I know that it's very arduous work to actually get that, pull up that grass plant, get all the dirt out from within these kind of dendritic roots, and then get that to steam distillation. But as for how I'm intrigued what you said about the plant and the ecological role that it plays, because I must admit, I haven't heard too much about that.
Oh, so I'm quite passionate about this. So first of all, you understand that it comes from a root. Do you understand how big the roots are?
I've seen footage of them like sourcing it and beating it with big machetes and big things, and the
Yeah.
amount of work it
So
requires. Yeah.
as a grass, it's almost like a big pampas grass. It grows to around about 8 foot high, and the roots match that. So they're about 8 foot long. But so where you would expect roots to kind of grow outwards, these grow straight down into the earth. So I'll preempt you now, all your discussions about Earth's chakra. If ever there was one that was reaching for the Earth chakra, it's vetiver. So this is really important because as it goes down so deep into the ground, it can do two things. So the first is that it can anchor soil. So imagine that this is being used in places like Bali, where there is loads and loads of construction. And what was happening before is because they were like doing construction near the beach, they'd dig up, but the soil would erode and fall into the sea and ruin the coral reefs.
Hmm.
So now they plant a wall of vetiver. So that acts as like a wind block, but it also anchors the soil into place, prevents soil erosion, and also then, of course, protects the coral. So that's really
Yeah.
important. So actually, there's sort of three things that it does. And the next thing that it can do is because it goes so deep into the ground, it reaches right down into the water table in places where there's very little water. And so when we come to talking about things like skin, it has an amazing relationship with moisture. So it grows in places, well, sort of India, those kind of places is its natural environment. Places like Thailand, where Vietnam, where the farmers are very poor. It's being planted around their fruit trees to bring up more water to give them a better harvest. So they get their water and their plants get much better watered because of the vetiver. But also it's amazing at dealing with toxicity. So it's what's called a phytoremediator. So that means that it can actually correct and clean soil. So it can take all manner of heavy metals out of soil. So again, if we're in an industrialized area where there's been construction, but also like where there's been factories and there's all sorts of crap gone into the soil, it takes it out. But would you believe it also can take out nuclear waste out of the ground? So it can really clean soil that would otherwise be useless, can be cleaned by using vetiver. So it's an astonishing oil.
Wow.
Yeah.
So looking at the plant, not only is it just doing what it needs to do to survive, but it kind of by looking after itself, it also seems to look after the well-being of everything around it as well.
Absolutely right. And so this is like very much an Ayurvedic medicine. It's been used in India for a very long time. And actually, we can trace its usage back, would you believe, 5,000 years. And we're not just talking about images, there's actual written texts in the Rig Veda, which is an Ayurvedic text, that talks about how if you throw vetiver roots into a stagnant well, it will clean the water. And they were talking about how they used to throw vetiver in, and any kind of wells that have got sort of pollution in them, but things like typhoid and stuff were cleaned out with using vetiver roots. So it's incredibly ancient knowledge.
Wow. Now, you also said that, it is native to our Indian area, but a lot of the world's vetiver is now sourced from Haiti. Do you
Yes,
know much about how it ended up in Haiti and why we're getting it from there now?
I do. So it's always been in Haiti. And it's always being farmed, but the reason why so much of the sort of the trade comes from Haiti now is because of a really important fair trade collective agreement. So because it's always been valuable for perfumery, for a long time, it's almost like a family kind of heirloom if you've got a Haiti a vetiver bush, because selling the roots can like pay for somebody's operations and stuff. It's valuable and you can do it very quickly. But because it's important after all of the disasters to deal with the soil erosion, there's a fair trade agreement with the farmers that says, no, you must leave it in the ground longer so that it can look after the island. And you must, when you take it out, you must also make sure you get loads and loads of the soil off and put the soil back onto the ground. And in relationship to that, if you make a commitment to do that, we will make a commitment to buy from you, and we will also pay for restoring your schools and your roads and things like that. So the whole kind of aromatic world bought into that fair trade agreement to ensure, and that's kind of our way of helping Haiti back onto its feet after things like Katrina and stuff like that.
Which is such a beautiful story,
It
for
is,
sure.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for those of you that maybe haven't had the chance to smell vetiver, it's a very unique smell. I find there's two reactions when people smell it for the first time. Some people are like, oh, that stinks like dirt. And other people are like, oh, that's like the lovely earth. And it really, being a root oil, it is very much a very earthy kind of aroma, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And earthy is the best possible description. It does smell like it lives in the ground. And there's, I mean, in the book's called the oil of tranquility, but I think that grounding is the best word that you can use for vetiver. It has many uses, but most of those are because it calms the body down. It really brings that, like, well, I always think that, what are they called now? Those weighted blankets, aren't they? They're like really heavy blankets to help you sleep deeply. It's like a weighted blanket. Yeah.
That's a really good analogy. And yeah, I would say for me, number one use of vetiver is sleep. We kind of nickname it the horse tranquilizer. So it's not one that I will use every single night, but nights where maybe I going to bed late and I have to get up in the morning. So I really need to maximize the 5 hours I'm going to get that night, or when I'm traveling, or if there are things that have been stressing me out, when I kind of feel like I need that extra addition. I love to apply it on the soles of my feet. It is a thick oil, and we do joke that, if you're popping it in a diffuser in your bedroom, by the time you've got enough out, you're half asleep already, and that's why it's such a good sleep oil. But the little tip is, women, if you wear a bra, pop it in there and walk around for a while, and that will warm it up. Or if you want to pop it in your underpant thing, that normally gets it out. But in the diffuser, on the soles of the feet, those are two of the ways that I use Vetiver quite regularly, just to, when I really need that deep sleep to and facilitate for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Last week we talked about spikenard, and I talked about how it was like an oil that was for emergency measures. Vetiver is the everyday tranquilizer, I think. Because of this fair trade agreement, the more money we can spend over there, the better, in my opinion. And I use an awful lot of Vetiver. I use it to like calm my nerves. If I'm anxious, it's tremendous. Like, even if you have sorry, with the lots of likes, not like me to say that. If you have extreme anxiety, but also just like low level worries, in the background, Vetiver is very, very good for that. And as you say, sleep is tremendous. But if you look at it from an Ayurvedic perspective, as you know, they talk in doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and usually these are in opposition. But Ayurveda says it is it reduces Vata, it reduces Pitta, it reduces Kapha. In other words, every single possible symptom you've got will come down. And I agree with that. It's such a useful oil. So if you, from the anxiety point of view, of course, that is helpful. But problems with concentration, there's quite a lot of studies of children with autism now being able to concentrate better. Even healthy people being able to recall mathematical calculations better because their brains are pacified. But then, of course, like, you haven't got the aches and pains in the body through stress. Your digestion just settles a bit better. Everything just calms down. It's a tremendous oil.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing. It is often kind of referred to as like a great sleep oil, but people shouldn't feel nervous about using it during the day. And that ability, especially, I've experienced the same, and with my customers as well, that during the day, if you need to focus, it's a really good one as well. And like you said, it grounds, and not quite. Yeah, it's more grounding than sedative in a way.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Yes, it's tranquilizing, but not sedative. It does work through the diazepine, same receptors that diazepine works, the benzodiazepine receptors. So you do have that kind of slowing down, but not grogginess. Like, if you were to, another really good oil for shock and those kind of horrors is valerian. Valerian makes you kind of like, I just can't function, I'm so out of it. You don't get that with Vetiver.
Yeah. So are the uses beyond the traditional slowing everything down? Do you use it for any, systems of the body, the respiratory, the digestive, anything like that? Or is it more of an overall thing?
Yeah, not so much. So the answer to that is yes and no. So would I use it for respiratory? I wouldn't use it for coughs and colds and stuff like that. I would use it for somebody who got asthma. Not because of the effect on the breathing, but because of the effects on the nerves of the breathing. So the nervous system is a component. So if somebody has stress-related asthma, really helpful. Same, definitely panic attacks, hyperventilation. So that, from that point of view, on the respiratory system, really good on the digestive system. Can't remember if it has specific scientific evidence on how it relates to serotonin. But serotonin is the mood modulator of the body, and around about 90% of the serotonin in the body exists within the gut. So calming that down, very good for things like IBS. Again, it's not particularly digestive oil, but would be really good from the nervous component. Again, things like urine retention, not a genitourinary thing, but if there's a stress component to it, then yes, it will help. So for fear of labouring that point, I kind of use it in most blends, to be honest, as a base note to fix the blend, because it's like a real basso profundo note, so it will make things last for a long, long time. So nobody's going to complain about feeling calmer, and I think that you will often find that your other parts of your blends work better just because the person's calmer.
And I guess you would say in probably the majority of either illness or dis-ease or sickness, it's normally caused by the body being in overdrive or too much stress. And there's going to be a benefit to reducing that stress, and even being sick, or especially with the respiratory system. If you can't breathe properly, that's stressful and scary. So being able to calm that down is going to be vital, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that we should comment on is how good it is for the skin. And it's an interesting dynamic, because it nourishes dry skin but reduces oiliness on the skin. So again, it's doing two opposite things. But if you've got very sensitive skin or reactive skin or things like sunburn, all of those are really soothed by it. And the other thing that is really important is how good it is for sexuality. So it's an aphrodisiac oil. But if somebody has problems with libido, but also if somebody has problems about being worried about sex for some reason, it's very good at making you feel in your body. Although I have to say, I'd probably choose patchouli over it for that, but maybe blend them together. But also premature ejaculation, because it slows.
Yeah, and obviously, again, when it's in the mind, slowing that down, yeah, that makes sense for sure. Is there any time where it would be contraindicated? Not really. No,
No,
like
first 16 weeks of pregnancy, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. So on a deeper level, I find, it's really interesting, and I've found over the years, especially with incorporating aromatherapy into tarot reading and using them together, watching what the cards are telling me in tarot, and then what people's reactions to the oils that I kind of link up with that. When people have a real aversion or aren't a fan of vetiver, I find that they have an aversion to stillness. And it's amazing how many of us are actually challenged by the idea of doing nothing. And I know that's something that I'm challenged with, that stillness, doing nothing, chilling out, relaxing, a guilt kind of creeps in, that I'm being unproductive in that type of way. But I really love this oil for those that are, I'm reminded of a friend who, when I lived in Melbourne, he would ring me on a Saturday morning and go, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Just doing some chores around the house and cleaning." He's like, "Do you want to come to the supermarket and do grocery shopping with me?" I'm not. Why?
Errand hand, my favourite things. I love that.
Yeah, well, he would do it. The reason was he'd had a bit of a rough childhood, and he couldn't deal with stillness and silence. So if he didn't have someone around him doing something while he was even doing mundane things, he had to have music blaring really loudly. And I find it really interesting how many people these days need to have something around them or something to do, because what would actually happen if we just stopped? And I find vetiver is a really nice one for sometimes giving us that challenge of maybe you need to slow down, maybe you need to focus on some things that are important. But we often have this angst within us of something's not quite right now, but we just keep on carrying on and we keep busy in that type of thing. And vetiver does come with a bit of a challenge of like, what would happen if you just stopped and allowed yourself to feel what's going on inside? And at the risk of sounding like a cheesy pun, it really helps you get to the root of a problem. And a blend or a pairing that I really like is I love to pair it with lime. It smells great. It's a really nice kind of, natural fragrance, but lime helps us get to the heart of an issue, and vetiver helps us get to the root of an issue. So if there's something bothering you, or you're feeling angsty, or if you're snappy or something like that, pairing these two can be really, really nice to kind of go, okay, well, what's really happening here? Why am I snapping at my children? Why am I not feeling connected to my partner? Why am I just, why am I not falling asleep at night? Because a lot of the time we're on such a go, go, go kind of approach to life that we're scared to stop because something might bubble up. So it's a really powerful oil that invites us to do that. Those that like it have more of a willingness to stop and be still. Those that don't, they want to keep vetiver away from them because it's almost like vetiver is going, I'm going to anchor you and I'm going to make you slow down. And they're like, So they have this real kind of repulsion to it.
I think that's absolutely all correct. Talking about that, like what's going on, I can feel something's wrong, getting to the root of it. It's a very Cancerian thing to kind of have this background worry going on all of the time. And do you ever watch do you know who Amber Khan is? Does Quietest Revolution?
No.
Oh, so you would love her. I would say to everyone, look her up. She's just astrology tarot cards each month. The most beautiful hair, and she always talks about how Cancerians have like this, like 2-week intuition. I was like, that's rubbish. Until I was like, oh my goodness, she's absolutely right. She says like Cancerians are going like, oh, that's so weird. I dreamt about a rabbit. I've seen a rabbit. What's going on with that? And then 2 weeks later, there's like something with a rabbit. And over time, I've come to realise I definitely do have that. And it's quite comforting, actually, because for a long time, I was like, I just don't really understand why I feel anxious. And now I'm starting to realise that she's right. I'm always like 2 weeks ahead of what's going on. That's easier to deal with. My anxiety is much lower. But I often use vetiver and clary sage for that whole thing of what's going on. Why do I feel antsy? There's absolutely no reason for this. Vetiver and clary sage are very good at being able to go, oh, I see what I was picking up. Yeah.
I also find vetiver is a really nice one to lean into around. It's got that kind of very earthy aroma, obviously, but around the autumn months or even near the end of the year, even if we, in the northern hemisphere, as you get to the winter solstice. I also find it's a really great oil for simplicity. And I've been having some really interesting conversations with people recently about their health. And, a lot of the time I'm like, well, how have you been going with, using your essential oils or making those changes in your health? And they're like, oh, I just need to get through Christmas and then I'll get to it. Or, our life just gets in the way. And there's always something that gets in the way of them looking after their health. And I'm amazed at how many people just don't have time to do simple things to improve their health. And I think we kind of, with a group of us, we're kind of looking at the psychology of what happens here. And what we're kind of coming to the basis of is that we all have this imposed obligation or perceived obligations upon us, that there are a certain amount of things that we need to do to keep everyone else happy. Because if we were just to become totally self-full or selfish, then we'd be letting other people down. And so we run ourselves ragged, neglecting our own health and our own well-being, making sure that someone's at school, someone's fed, someone's got the job done by the deadline and all that type of thing. And we often cut corners in our own well-being. But as we know, the more we can actually be at our best, the better we can deliver in the world. So vetiver is a really nice one to kind of help us go, let's simplify a little bit. Let's slow down and bring ourselves back to the core importance of our universe. And are there excessive things that I just feel obliged to do that maybe are helping someone else out with their life, but maybe are detrimental to my own? And I think if everyone could pause and stop and think about how could I be my best so that I can give my best, then we'd be in a much better place in this world. And I think vetiver is a really core one for helping us to, again, take stock and not just get into that habit of the alarm's gone off in the morning. This is what my schedule tells me I need to do. I've got some messages. I need to reply to these people. I need to respond to these people. I need to keep them happy. I need to do this. And we get to the end of the day and we haven't even thought about ourselves at all. So I think vetiver can really, on that deeper introspective, what am I doing with my life on a daily basis and how is that playing out in the bigger scheme of things, can be a really valuable meditation tool and just something to anchor you by having it around in your life.
Yeah, lesson heard. Thank you, Adam. but I do think that We should also acknowledge that the people do have times in their life where that's just what you got to do. You just got to do it. There's no time for introspection. You just got to do it. And okay, so let's reframe what I was going to say. So it's a grass. So therefore, it falls under cereals. It's in that family of grasses. So cereals are Ceres, Demeter, and so this mothering archetype is very prevalent within it. This idea of looking after, and actually, interestingly, I missed that fact out. That there's I can't really speak to this from a personal therapy point of view, but lots of research into vetiver for people who have anorexia and eating disorders. So that's interesting with that idea of nourishment as well. But this idea that I have to look after people may sometimes be a psychological thing, but may also be a genuine fact. And so, and there perhaps isn't time to go and get a massage and all of those things, but in those kind of situations, vetiver is very good at going, but we can calm you, but you can get to sleep. Yeah.
I guess, one of the things that, as you were talking at the start and talking about the action of the grass and what it does, and it's getting rid of radioactive material and stopping soil erosion and all that type of thing, it obviously, as a plant, it's not trying to do that to help everyone else out to its own detriment. It's actually doing that as it just does what it does best in growing to be vetiver. Do you know what I mean? So I guess when we look at the lesson for the plant, it's how can I do my best, but also serve the community rather than at the detriment as well. And I think also with that aspect of balance, just to kind of go off on a tangent, balance, if we look in nature, is not getting everything perfect every single day. Nature doesn't, the temperature's not the same every day. The sun doesn't rise at the same time every day. It's about that ebb and flow. And I think vetiver is a really nice one to lean into in periods in our life when maybe we do need to slow down in the autumn and the winter to kind of have that moment to recover. We're all going to have crazy times when we've got a work project where there's going to be something happening with the family, there's a wedding, there's a holiday that's going to throw us out. But living in that frame of life or style of life constantly, that's going to be detrimental. And I think that's where vetiver is a nice one to kind of lump in and go, when the cracks are starting to show because you've been in an active, almost like a summer state for too long, vetiver is going to drag you into the autumn and into the winter so that you can regenerate in the spring. And I'm not talking about the actual seasons of the year. I'm talking about the seasons of our life and how we go through our days, our months, and our years.
I can't remember the guy's name. There was how you go through Facebook videos and then you're like, oh, I've seen your video. And I don't know what the guy was. So if he's watching this and he goes, copyright, I'm really sorry. But there was this guy who was talking about perfection, and he said, perfection is just a fancy word for dissatisfaction. And I was like, whoa, that's quite a statement, but I can't actually argue with it, and it really turned it upside down. I'm such a perfectionist. It's like, I'm so proud of that, but actually just know you're fundamentally dissatisfied with everything that you do.
That's really quite profound. I really like that.
And I wish I'd got his name because it was really clever. And I thought, do you know what? That's that moment kind of made me go, whoa, gosh, I see myself in the mirror then.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I love that. And vetiver would tie in perfectly with that. Is that just being at peace with things, and why do things need to be perfect? Why, even, a practice that is commonly encouraged is, whether you write it, journal it, pop it in your phone, or just think it, gratitude, being grateful for how things are. And, I'm reminded of a passage by Rumi, who said he went walking through a forest one day looking at all the trees. And, there's one tree that had fallen over because it'd been struck by lightning. And another one had kind of grown a bit weird to, to get the sunlight. And they'd all grown just to be the way they need to be to survive. And then he went walking through the city and realized how quick we are to judge people and go, oh, why are they so fat? Or why are they so grumpy? And different things like that. And he said, maybe from now on, we should try and, judge people like we do the trees and try and understand why they've grown the way they are. And I don't think I've ever walked through a
I like
forest,
walking.
been walking through a forest and gone, oh, that's an ugly looking tree. Or why on earth is that tree not got all the branches parallel and things like that? But it's amazing how when it comes to people, when it comes to ourselves, when it comes to things we produce in our lives, that we can't just accept them for how they've unfolded and find peace with that. And I think vetiver would be a really good oil to help us if we are finding ourselves in that perfectionist state.
So I'm going to jump right off tangent because there is another interesting fact I want to tell you about vetiver, because I think this is just, I don't really know why I find it lovely, but I do. So did you know that there's not just one kind of vetiver?
Yeah. Normally, the key. I'm trying to remember the Latin name off the top of my head, which I can't. But no, fill us in.
Yeah, they're all the same vetiver, but one grows in a particular part of India where it's way hotter, and so we call, like, the normal vetiver that we have is called rookus, but then there's like a superior one that's just called Kuss, Khus, and Kuss is like diamonds, it's so valuable. So how do we know what Kuss is? So as you know, there aren't really any particular benchmarks in essential oils for purity and for things like that. There's not like therapeutic grade, I'll get that in, and all of those like grading systems. But there are certain things that have to be met in terms of export. So one of these is called a refractive index. So that is when light shines through a drop, what's the angle? So that, and then they're able to say, okay, that's quite pure and that meets that specification. Well, so normal vetiver, the light shines through and it bends to the right. It's dextro-rotatory. But in this really super, would you believe it bends the opposite way? It's levo-rotatory. So nobody really understands why, but for whatever reason, the heat of the sun changes the plant so much that it actually changes the way light shines through it.
Wow. And what is this oil just better at slowing us down and doing all the things we've been talking about?
I don't know the answer because I've never seen it. I've never seen it on sale, but it's just like, I would say, I'm probably being racist now, but I would say it probably goes to like the Arabian royal families and places like that. I don't think we will probably ever see it on the market here. So I don't know the answer.
Interesting. So we've kind of danced around a little bit to do with our astrology. Ceres, I think, is the perfect, pairing for vetiver. I normally, go with good old Venus. What would you pair vetiver with?
So Saturn or Pluto.
Yeah. So that's slowing down and that base and that type of thing as well. Yep. And I think we both agree that base chakra, even down into that good old Earth Star chakra, would be the chakra for vetiver.
Yeah, but also it's definitely, I mean, we haven't really talked about it, but it's a meditation oil, fundamentally it is. So I think we have to say crown chakra and brow chakra as well.
Would you be inclined just to purely meditate with vetiver, or would you use vetiver? I kind of
Often
feel
do.
like vetiver sometimes can be a bit of like the gateway drug into slowing down, and then maybe then reaching for something like sandalwood or frankincense that would kind of open us up to the new horizons. But a lot of people I find get frustrated because they're not getting the epiphanies they want from crystals or oils or angels or whatever. And I'm like, well, have you stopped to actually listen? And they haven't. So I kind of find it's a really good anchor point or starting point.
I think, when I started to learn about meditation, it was like you have to be able to fix a red triangle in your brain and nothing else happened. And it was so frustrating, but that was as much as we knew about meditation. Now there's so many different ways of meditating, and really the objective is only to be able to slow the mind down and to be able to move into a theta state where your mind becomes more open to things. But if you are in a situation where you want to be able to slow your mind down, but you just can't, then, and which is me because I do have a monkey mind, it's a really good one. And actually, there's a specific Ayurvedic treatment called, might not get it completely right, I think it's Shirodora or Shirodoma, where one lies on a couch and then imagine like a funnel, like a pipette that just gently trickles continuously oil with vetiver onto the forehead, and it just streams off. And it's tremendous evidence for how good it is for anxiety. Just this, like, so you just can't notice anything else but this stream on the brow chakra and dropping. And so if you could mimic this idea of just slowing down the brow chakra, and so I would say slow massage in an anti-clockwise direction, so that it's just kind of going the opposite way to the woo, and just doing that really calms it down. So I often use it just on its own, just to go, shut up, brain.
Yeah. There's a beautiful analogy that our mind is like a glass of muddy water, and when it settles and the mud can go to the bottom, then we can have that clarity. And I think Vetiver would be great for that.
Well, that's a really good analogy, because what does it do to the well? It takes the crap out of the well.
There you go. Yeah. So any final facts that are hidden in your book that we should know about, or should we just get everyone to
read the book?
Grab the book?
Read the book. I think it is, like I say, yes, when we were talking about spiking art, I said 400 pages. This isn't. I don't think this is about 100, but there's loads and loads of, if people don't know, loads of like recipes at the book and at the back and stuff of how to use it. But yeah, it's a lovely oil. I think everyone should really get to grips with vetiver.
Yeah, I think, in some ways, just like it encourages the life of simplicity and getting back to basics, it's just that's what it does. Mm-hmm. No more discussion about it. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. We'll be back next week when we dive into another gift from Mother Nature. Until then, take care.
Bye-bye.